The cold bit through every seam of the B-17 Flying Fortress as it climbed through 22,000 feet over the German countryside. February 20th, 1944. The moon hung like a broken coin above the clouds, casting just enough light to turn the world below into a landscape of silver and shadow. Inside the bomber designated Devil's Chariot, 10 men breathed oxygen through masks that frosted with each exhale, their breath forming small clouds in the cramped, freezing interior. Staff Sergeant Michael "Mickey" O'Brien sat hunched in the ball turret beneath the aircraft's belly, suspended in a transparent sphere of plexiglass and twin .50 caliber machine guns. At 22 years old, he was one of the youngest gunners in the 381st Bombardment Group, but tonight marked his 18th mission. The superstitious ones said 18 was unlucky. Mickey tried not to think about it. The mission briefing had been clear and brutal in its simplicity: a night raid on the ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt. The same target that had cost the 8th Air Force 60 bombers just 4 months earlier in what they now called Black Thursday. But this time, they were going in under cover of darkness, hoping to catch the Luftwaffe off guard. The German night fighter squadrons were mostly positioned for British RAF raids coming from the west. American bombers approaching from the south might slip through. Might. "Ball turret to pilot," Mickey said into his throat mic, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "Visual clear below. No searchlights yet." "Copy that, Mickey," came the response from Captain James Holbrook, the aircraft commander. Holbrook was 24 but looked 40 in the harsh light of the cockpit. 3 tours would do that to a man. "Stay sharp. Intelligence says they've got new night fighters in this sector. Messerschmitt 110s with upward-firing cannons. Schrage Musik, they call it. Jazz music." Mickey knew about Schrage Musik. Cannons mounted at an angle behind the cockpit, firing upward. A night fighter could slide beneath a bomber, invisible in its blind spot, and tear it apart from below without the crew ever seeing what killed them. It was the reason Mickey never relaxed in the ball turret, why his eyes constantly scanned the darkness beneath them, looking for the telltale exhaust flames of a pursuing fighter. The formation consisted of 12 B-17s, flying in a loose combat box designed for mutual protection. But at night, that protection was theoretical at best. The darkness that concealed them from searchlights also made it nearly impossible to maintain tight formation. Each bomber was essentially alone, separated by hundreds of yards of empty sky. "Bombardier to crew," came the voice of Lieutenant David Chen, lying prone in the nose section. "IP in 7 minutes. Flak's going to be heavy. They've got 88s all around the target." Mickey rotated the turret slowly, his gloved fingers resting on the gun controls. The turret was so small he had to curl into a fetal position to fit, his knees nearly touching his chest. 4 hours in this position and his legs were already numb. But the discomfort kept him alert, kept his mind focused on the darkness below. Through his headset, he could hear the quiet breathing of the other gunners. Sergeant Tom Rodriguez in the top turret, constantly rotating, searching the sky above. Sergeants Bill Morrison and Frank Kowalski at the waist guns, covering the sides. Sergeant Eddie Walsh in the tail, watching their 6 o'clock. Each man in his position, each man alone with his thoughts and his guns. "Fighters!" Rodriguez's voice exploded over the intercom, no longer quiet, no longer calm. "Top turret, 11 o'clock high. 2 contacts, no. 3. They're turning in." Mickey's blood ran cold. He craned his neck, trying to see upward through the plexiglass, but the turret's design limited his field of view. All he could see was the endless darkness below, the faint moonlight reflecting off the clouds far beneath them. The sound of Rodriguez's twin 50s opened up, a hammering roar that vibrated through the entire aircraft. Tracer rounds arced into the night sky, red lines scratching against the darkness. Then the waist guns joined in, and suddenly Devil's Chariot was alive with the sound of war. "Evasive!" Holbrook shouted, and the bomber banked hard to the right. Mickey's stomach lurched as gravity shifted, the turret swinging wildly. He fought to keep his orientation, fought to keep his eyes scanning below. That's when he saw it. A shadow against shadows, darker than the night itself. A twin-engine shape, sliding silently beneath them, maybe 200 feet below. The distinctive silhouette of a Messerschmitt 110, its engine's exhaust barely visible as tiny blue flames. It was positioning itself directly underneath, right in the blind spot, right where the Schrage music cannons could reach up and kill them all. "Fighter below." Mickey's voice cut through the chaos on the intercom. 12 o'clock low, coming into firing position. His hands moved instinctively, traversing the turret, bringing the twin 50s to bear. The Me-110 was rising now, climbing to get into optimum firing range. Mickey could see it clearly in the moonlight, the long fuselage, the twin tails, the black crosses on its wings. He could even see the faint outline of the pilot in the cockpit, hunched over his controls. Time seemed to slow. Everything that happened next would occur in seconds, but Mickey would remember it as if it took hours. The German fighter pilot was good. He stayed perfectly positioned in the bomber's blind spot, invisible to everyone except the ball turret gunner. In another moment, he would fire. In another moment, Devil's Chariot would become another statistic, another burning bomber falling from the night sky. Mickey's finger tightened on the trigger. The war had come to this. One American gunner, hanging upside down in a frozen ball of plexiglass, against one German pilot who had already killed God knows how many Allied bombers. Two men, separated by 200 feet of cold air and the simple mathematics of who would fire first. The night exploded. The twin .50 caliber machine guns erupted in Mickey's hands, their muzzle flashes turning the ball turret into a strobe-lit sphere of violence. The recoil hammered through his shoulders as he poured fire downward, the tracer rounds drawing burning lines through the darkness toward the Messerschmitt 110. The smell of cordite filled the small space, acrid and choking even through his oxygen mask. The German pilot saw the tracers coming. He had to. But he was committed to his attack run, and for a critical second, he held his course. That second was enough. Mickey watched his rounds walk across the night fighter's right engine, sparks flying as .50 caliber bullets tore through aluminum and steel. The engine cowling erupted in flame, a brilliant orange flower blooming in the darkness. "Got him! Got him!" Mickey shouted, but his celebration died in his throat. The Me-110 wasn't breaking off. Even with one engine on fire, the pilot was still climbing, still bringing his Schrage music cannons to bear. The man was either incredibly brave or incredibly determined to take them down with him. "He's still coming." Mickey's voice cracked with urgency. "He's gonna shoot." Holbrook threw the B-17 into a violent left bank, the bomber shuddering with the strain. Mickey felt himself pressed against the side of the turret as gravity went sideways. He fought the controls, trying to keep his guns trained on the burning fighter below, but the turret's motors whined in protest as they struggled against the G-forces. The Messerschmitt fired. Twin streams of 20mm cannon shells reached up from the darkness, their phosphorescent tracers painting ghostly green lines through the night. The rounds hammered into Devil's Chariot's belly, and Mickey felt the impacts as physical blows. One shell exploded just feet from his turret, the shrapnel pinging off the plexiglass like deadly hail. The ball turret rang like a bell. "We're hit," came Morrison's voice from the waist. "Number 3 engines smoking." Mickey kept firing. The Me-110 was fully engulfed now, both engines trailing flame, but it was still flying, still shooting. The German pilot was fighting his controls, trying to hold his aircraft steady for just a few more seconds, trying to kill them even as his own plane died around him. Then the night fighter's wing folded. Just snapped backward as if swatted by an invisible hand. The Messerschmitt rolled inverted, its burning engines drawing lazy circles against the stars as it fell away into darkness. Mickey watched it spiral down, down, until it disappeared into the cloud layer far below. He never saw it hit the ground. He never saw a parachute. Splash 1. Rodriguez called out. Mickey got him. But there was no time for celebration. The intercom erupted with overlapping voices, organized chaos as the crew assessed the damage. "Number 3 engines on fire," called Sergeant Paul Novak, the flight engineer. "Temperatures redlining." "Feather it," Holbrook ordered. Morrison, "Damage report from the waist." "We've got holes everywhere back here," Morrison responded, his voice tight. "Kowalski's hit. Shell fragment got him in the shoulder. He's bleeding, but he's alive." Mickey rotated the turret, scanning for more fighters. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding his system. They were still 15 minutes from the target, still deep in German airspace, and they just announced their presence to every night fighter controller in the sector. Bombardier to pilot, Chen's voice was professionally calm. "We've got a problem. The fighter's cannon fire went through the bomb bay. 2 of the 500-pounders are damaged. I can see fluid leaking. Could be hydraulic fluid, could be something worse." "Can we salvo them?" Holbrook asked. "Negative. The release mechanism is jammed. We're carrying them to target whether we like it or not." Through the ball turret's plexiglass dome, Mickey could see the target area approaching. The city of Schweinfurt was lit up like a deadly Christmas display. Searchlights swept the sky in coordinated patterns, their beams creating cones of brilliant white light that turned night into day for any bomber caught in their grasp. And around those searchlights, the anti-aircraft fire was already starting, 88 mm flak shells bursting at altitude in precise patterns of black smoke and orange flame. "Flak ahead," Mickey reported unnecessarily. Everyone could see it now. The formation had spread out during the fighter attack. Mickey could see only 3 other B-17s nearby, scattered across miles of sky. The neat combat box had disintegrated into individual bombers, each making their own way to target, each alone against the defenses below. Devil's Chariot entered the flak field. The first burst exploded 200 feet to their left, a perfect sphere of black smoke and red core. Then another, closer this time. The German radar-directed flak was brutally accurate, the gunners below tracking them with scientific precision. Each shell was fused to explode at exactly their altitude, creating a lethal pattern of shrapnel that could shred a bomber in seconds. Crack, crack, crack. The shells burst around them in a deadly rhythm, the sound like thunder in a tin can. Each explosion made the bomber shudder and jump, hot shrapnel pinging off the fuselage like steel rain. Mickey curled tighter in his turret, making himself as small as possible, knowing it was futile. If a shell had his name on it, no amount of ducking would help. "Steady," Holbrook's voice was calm, almost meditative. "Bomb run. IP in 30 seconds. Bombardier, the aircraft is yours." "I've got it," Chen confirmed. Opening bomb bay doors. The bomber's speed decreased slightly as the doors opened, creating drag. Mickey felt the change in the aircraft's attitude, felt the increased vibration. Through his position at the bottom of the plane, he could actually see the doors opening, see the bombs hanging in their racks, see the searchlights below reaching up like fingers trying to grab them. "Fighters," Walsh's voice from the tail. "Coming in from 7 o'clock. 2 of them." Mickey cranked the turret around, trying to see behind them, but his field of view was limited. Above him, he could hear Rodriguez's guns open up again, the familiar hammer of the 50s. The waist guns joined in, Morrison firing despite being surrounded by wounded Kowalski and pools of blood on the deck. One of the attacking fighters made the mistake of diving below the formation. Mickey saw it clearly, a Focke-Wulf 190, sleek and deadly, its radial engine snarling as it tried to rake Devil's Chariot from below. The pilot probably thought he was in the blind spot. He was wrong. Mickey pressed the trigger and held it down, walking his tracers across the fighter's path. The FW-190 flew directly into the stream of bullets. Mickey saw his rounds hit, saw them chew across the fighter's wing root, saw pieces of cowling tear away, saw the cockpit canopy shatter. The German fighter rolled hard right and dove away, smoking heavily, disappearing into the darkness below. "I'm hit!" Rodriguez shouted suddenly. "Top turret taking damage." "Stay on those guns," Holbrook ordered. "Bombs away." Chen called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Bombs away, bombs away." Mickey felt the bomber leap upward as 3 tons of high explosive fell free. The bomb bay doors remained open for a moment longer, and he could look down and actually see the bombs tumbling away, black shapes against the searchlight beams, falling toward the ball-bearing factories below. But they weren't out of danger. Not even close. 2 of the bombs, the damaged ones, were still hanging in the racks, refusing to release. And they were still in the flak field, still surrounded by enemy fighters, still deep in the most heavily defended airspace in Europe. "Bomb bay doors won't close," Novak reported. "Mechanisms damaged. We're stuck open." Flying with an open bomb bay was a death sentence. The drag would slow them down, make them an easy target. The open cavity would catch fighter cannon shells and funnel them into the fuselage. And they still had 2,000 pounds of live ordnance hanging in racks that were probably damaged. "Rodriguez," Holbrook called. "You still with us?" Silence on the intercom. Then weak and pained, I'm here. Took some shrapnel to the leg. I can still shoot." Mickey rotated the turret constantly, searching for threats. The sweat inside his flight suit was freezing against his skin. His ammunition counters showed he'd burned through half his load. They still had 200 miles to the English Channel, 200 miles through the most dangerous airspace on Earth. And then he saw them. 4 shapes, emerging from the darkness at their altitude. More Mi-110 night fighters, their twin engines glowing faintly in the moonlight. They were setting up for a coordinated attack, 2 from each side, timing their runs to overwhelm the bomber's defensive fire. Multiple fighters. Mickey called out. 10 and 2 o'clock, level. They're coordinating. This was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. 4 German fighters against 1 damaged bomber with a wounded crew, open bomb bay, 3 engines, and half their ammunition already gone. The mathematics of survival were brutally simple, and right now they didn't look good. Mickey's hands settled on the gun controls. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. His training took over, muscle memory and instinct replacing conscious thought. The night fighters began their attack runs. The 4 Messerschmitt 110s came in like wolves, their attack perfectly synchronized. Mickey watched them through the ball turret's plexiglass as they split into pairs, 2 diving from 10 o'clock high, 2 climbing from 2 o'clock low. They were boxing the bomber in, forcing the gunners to choose which threat to engage, knowing they couldn't cover both angles simultaneously. Multiple targets. Rodriguez shouted from the top turret. "I'm taking the high pair. I've got low left," Mickey called, traversing his guns toward the climbing fighters. His heart hammered against his ribs. 4 against 1. Professional night fighter crews against a shot-up bomber. Every tactical manual said this was over before it began. The first Mi-110 opened fire from above, its nose-mounted 20mm cannon spitting yellow flame. The rounds tore through the B-17's right wing, punching fist-sized holes in the aluminum skin. Rodriguez's guns answered immediately, his tracers reaching up toward the attacking fighter, but the German pilot was good. He jinked left, then right, making himself a difficult target while maintaining his fire. Mickey ignored the fight above. That was Rodriguez's sector. He focused on the 2 fighters climbing from below, closing fast. The lead aircraft was maybe 500 feet away now, its cannon already sparking. Mickey could see the pilot clearly in the moonlight, could see the yellow nose paint, could see the kill markers stenciled beneath the cockpit. 9 bombers. This pilot had killed 9 Allied crews. Not tonight, Mickey thought. Not us. He opened fire. The ball turret shook violently as both .50 calibers hammered away, the spent brass casings ejecting upward into a collection bag above his head. His tracer rounds reached out toward the climbing fighter, the red lines converging on the Messerschmitt's nose. The German pilot saw them coming and broke right, but Mickey anticipated the move, leading his target like shooting ducks back home in Michigan. His bullets caught the fighter's right engine, sparks flying as rounds punched through the cowling. But the second fighter was still coming, and this pilot was even better than the first. He came in from a different angle, sliding beneath Mickey's field of fire, positioning for a belly shot with his upward-firing cannons. The Schrage Musik. The silent killer. I can't get him, Mickey shouted into the intercom. Second fighter's in my blind spot. I've got him, Walsh called from the tail position. The tail guns opened up, their longer range allowing Walsh to engage the fighter before it could get into position. Mickey saw the tracers streaking past his turret, saw them converge on the night fighter. The Me-110's canopy shattered, and the fighter broke off hard, rolling away from the bomber. Above them, Rodriguez was fighting his own battle. Blood ran down his leg from the shrapnel wound, pooling in the bottom of the top turret. He could feel himself getting weaker, could feel the cold creeping in. But his hands stayed on the guns, his eyes tracking the 2 fighters diving from above. "Come on," he muttered to himself. "Come on, you bastards. Just a little closer." The lead fighter came in fast, cannon blazing. Rounds hammered into the B-17's fuselage, walking from tail to nose. One shell exploded in the radio room, killing Sergeant James Patterson instantly. Another blew through the cockpit plexiglass, missing Holbrook's head by inches. The co-pilot, Lieutenant Robert Manning, took shrapnel in his arm but stayed on the controls. Rodriguez waited. The fighter filled his gun sight, so close he could see the rivets on its cowling. Then he pressed the trigger. The twin 50s roared. The range was point-blank, maybe 200 feet. At that distance, every round hit. The Messerschmitt's cockpit disintegrated in a spray of glass and blood. The fighter rolled inverted, completely out of control, and fell away spinning, its pilot dead at the controls. But Rodriguez had exposed himself. The second fighter in the high pair had a clear shot, and the pilot took it. A burst of 20mm cannon fire raked the top turret, shells exploding against the turret's armor. Rodriguez felt the impacts through his entire body. The turret's motors sparked and died. One of his guns was hit, the barrel bent at an impossible angle. Blood poured from new wounds in his chest and shoulder. "Rodriguez!" Holbrook shouted. "Talk to me." No response. Mickey saw it all from below. Saw the top turret take the hit, saw it stop rotating. They'd lost their primary defense against high attacks. And the fighters knew it. "Top turret's out," Mickey called. "Rodriguez isn't responding." The remaining 3 Me-110s regrouped for another pass. They'd taken casualties, but so had the bomber. It was a war of attrition now, and the math still favored the fighters. They circled like sharks, looking for the killing angle. Inside the cockpit, Holbrook was fighting to keep the bomber in the air. Number 3 engine was feathered and useless. Number 4 was running rough, losing oil pressure. The hydraulic system was failing, making the controls heavy and sluggish. The bomb bay doors were still open, and they still had 2 damaged bombs hanging in the racks that could detonate if they took another hit. "We've got maybe 10 minutes of fuel left in this configuration," Manning said through gritted teeth, blood dripping from his wounded arm onto the controls. "We're not going to make it back to England." "Then we make it to the Channel," Holbrook replied. "If we can ditch in the Channel, air-sea rescue might find us." "Might," Manning repeated. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The fighters came in again, this time all 3 from different angles. One high, one low, one from the beam. It was a coordinated attack designed to overwhelm the remaining defensive fire. Mickey chose the low fighter, the most immediate threat to the exposed bomb bay and the damaged ordnance still hanging there. This pilot was conservative, cautious. He stayed just out of effective range, pecking away with careful bursts from his cannon, refusing to commit to a close pass. Mickey fired back, but the range was too great for his .50 calibers to be truly effective. Tracer rounds reached out toward the fighter but fell short, arcing away into the darkness. "I need him closer," Mickey shouted in frustration. The fighter on the beam was Morrison's problem. The waist gunner was firing one-handed, his other arm supporting the unconscious Kowalski against the fuselage wall. The fighter came in fast, its cannon blazing, and Morrison met it with sustained fire from his .50 caliber. The two streams of fire crossed in the darkness, tracers painting crazy patterns against the night sky. Morrison's rounds hit first. The Me-110 staggered in mid-flight, its left engine streaming smoke. But the German pilot kept coming, kept firing, determined to make this attack count. His rounds tore through the waist section, punching through the thin aluminum skin like paper. Morrison felt a hammer blow to his leg and went down hard, his gun swinging uselessly on its mount. The fighter pulled up and away, trailing smoke and flame, but it had done its damage. The waist section was destroyed. Morrison was down. Kowalski was unconscious. The port side was defenseless. In the ball turret, Mickey felt the bomber shuddering beneath him, felt the aircraft losing cohesion like a boxer taking punch after punch. They were dying slowly, and there was nothing he could do about it. His sector remained clear. The cautious fighter had broken off, but he was useless against the threats above and to the sides. Then Rodriguez's voice, weak and wet with blood, "I'm still here. Guns are jammed, but I can see them." Mickey, fighter at 5 o'clock high, diving. "He's lining up for a kill shot at the cockpit." Mickey cranked the turret around, but the angle was impossible. He couldn't elevate his guns high enough to engage a target above and behind. The ball turret's design simply didn't allow it. "Walsh," Mickey called. "You've got to take him." "I can't see him," Walsh responded. "He's in my blind spot, right in the tail's dead zone." The fighter was perfectly positioned. Above Walsh's maximum elevation, behind Mickey's traverse limit. It was a textbook attack run, coming down at a 45-degree angle directly toward the cockpit. At this angle, the fighter would have a clear shot at both pilots. One burst and Devil's Chariot would be headless, uncontrolled, a dead bomber falling from the sky. Mickey watched the fighter line up its shot, watched the yellow flash of its cannon, watched the tracer rounds reaching toward the cockpit like fingers of death. He made a decision. "Captain," Mickey called into the intercom. "Hard left. Now." Holbrook didn't question, didn't hesitate. He threw the bomber into the hardest left bank the damaged aircraft could manage, the B-17 tilting violently on its remaining good engines. The fighter's rounds missed high, passing through the space where the bomber had been a second before. But the maneuver changed everything. The hard bank brought the ball turret around, changed the angles, gave Mickey a shot he shouldn't have had. The fighter was pulling up from its dive, the pilot thinking he'd missed, setting up for another pass. Mickey elevated his guns to their maximum angle. It wasn't enough. The fighter was still too high. But physics was on his side now. The fighter was climbing away, bleeding energy, getting slower. And Mickey wasn't aiming where the fighter was. He was aiming where it would be. He pressed the trigger and held it down, firing a long sustained burst into empty air. 60 rounds. 80. 100. His ammunition counters spun toward 0. The tracers arced upward into darkness, reaching, searching. The Messerschmitt 110 climbed directly into the stream of fire. It was pure chance. Pure luck. The kind of shot that happened once in a million times. But it happened. Mickey saw his rounds tear across the fighter's belly, saw them rip through the fuel tanks, saw the aircraft erupt in a massive fireball that lit up the entire sky. The explosion was so close that Devil's chariot rocked in the blast wave, and for a moment everything was day-bright and terrible. Then darkness again. And silence. The surviving fighters had broken off, disappearing into the night. Maybe they were low on fuel. Maybe they'd decided this bomber was too much trouble. Maybe they just got lucky. Status report. Holbrook's voice was hoarse, exhausted. The responses came in, each one a catalogue of damage and casualties. Rodriguez here. I'm alive. Turrets destroyed. I'm bleeding pretty bad. Morrison. Took one in the leg. Kowalski's alive but unconscious. Walsh. I'm okay. Tail section Swiss cheese but still attached. Chen. Nose sections holding together. Patterson's dead. Radios destroyed. Novak. Engines 2 and 4 are dying. We've got maybe 5 minutes of power left. Mickey. Ball turret. I'm out of ammunition. The silence after battle was somehow worse than the chaos of combat. Without the guns firing, without the engines roaring at full power, Devil's chariot became a tomb of creaking metal and labored breathing. Mickey rotated the ball turret slowly, scanning the empty sky below, his hands still trembling on the now useless gun controls. The 200 rounds he'd fired in that final desperate burst, rounds that shouldn't have hit, couldn't have hit, had emptied his ammunition completely. "We're not going to make it to England." Holbrook's voice was matter-of-fact over the intercom, devoid of drama. He was simply stating a mathematical truth. Number 2 is losing oil pressure now. Number 4's redlined. We've got 2 engines left and they're not going to last. Through the ball turret's plexiglass, Mickey could see the English Channel in the distance, a dark line where the earth met the sky. So close. Maybe 60 miles. Might as well have been 600. How long? Manning asked. 10 minutes. Maybe 15 if we're lucky. We haven't been lucky yet tonight, Manning observed. Why start now? Mickey heard something in the co-pilot's voice. Not fear exactly, but a kind of resigned acceptance. They'd survived the fighters. They'd survived the flak. They'd made it out of German airspace. But the laws of physics and mechanical failure didn't care about courage or skill. The bomber was dying beneath them, bleeding fuel and hydraulic fluid and hope. "Ball turret to pilot," Mickey said. "Request permission to come back inside, sir." "Negative, Mickey," Holbrook responded. "If we ditch, you need to be out of that turret. But we can't retract it with the hydraulics shot. I need you to crank it up manually. There's a hand crank in the waist section." Mickey felt his stomach drop. The manual crank meant Morrison or one of the other wounded crew would have to turn the mechanism while he was still inside the turret. It was dangerous under the best circumstances. If they made a mistake, if the gears slipped, he could be crushed or trapped. But there was no choice. "Morrison," Mickey called. "You still with us?" "Yeah." Morrison's voice was tight with pain. "Legs pretty torn up, but I can still move." "I'll get you out, Mickey. Just hold on." Above, in what remained of the top turret, Rodriguez was fighting to stay conscious. Blood loss and shock were dragging him down into darkness, but he forced himself to stay aware. He'd been hit 3 times, leg, shoulder, chest. The chest wound was the worst. He could feel the wet heat spreading across his flight suit, could taste copper in his mouth. But he was alive. Patterson wasn't. The radio operator had died instantly when the shell came through. At least it had been quick. "Hey, Rodriguez," Walsh called from the tail. "You still with us, buddy?" "Still here," Rodriguez managed. "Not going anywhere. Just hang on. We're going to make it." We're going to. Losing number 2. Novak's voice cut through. She's seizing. Feathering now. The bomber lurched as another engine died. They were down to 2 now, 1 and 4, both damaged, both struggling. The aircraft's nose dropped despite Holbrook's efforts to trim her up. They were descending whether they wanted to or not, gravity taking over where power had failed. Altitude? Manning asked. 18,000, Holbrook said. Losing 500 feet per minute. Mickey did the math in his head. 36 minutes to sea level at this rate. But they'd lose the remaining engines long before that. 20 minutes, maybe. Maybe less. Morrison, I need that turret cranked up now, Holbrook ordered. Mickey needs to be back inside before we hit the water. In the waist section, Morrison dragged himself to the hand crank mechanism, his wounded leg leaving a trail of blood across the deck. Kowalski was stirring now, groaning softly, but still too weak to help. The crank was a simple mechanical device, a long steel handle connected to gears that manually rotated the ball turret. But it required strength and steady hands, 2 things Morrison wasn't sure he had anymore. "Mickey, I'm on the crank," Morrison called. "When I start turning, you need to guide the turret. If it gets off track, we could jam it. You understand?" "I understand," Mickey said. He placed his hands on the turret walls, ready to feel for any binding or resistance. This had to work. If he was still in the turret when they ditched, he'd drown. The turret would flood in seconds, and there was no escape from inside. Morrison began cranking. The turret moved with agonizing slowness, inch by inch, the gears grinding and protesting. Mickey felt the rotation, felt himself rising slowly back into the fuselage. It was working. It was actually working. Then the mechanism jammed. "It's stuck," Morrison shouted. "Something's binding." Mickey was halfway up, the turret at a 45-degree angle. Not in, not out. Trapped in the worst possible position. He could see into the waist section now, could see Morrison straining at the crank, could see the blood on the deck, could see Kowalski trying to rise to help. "Morrison, reverse it," Holbrook ordered. "Back it down, try again." Morrison cranked in the opposite direction. The turret moved slightly, then jammed again. Something in the mechanism was damaged, bent or broken from the fighter attacks. Mickey was stuck. "How long to the water?" Mickey asked quietly. 16 minutes, Novak said. "Maybe less." 16 minutes. Not enough time to figure out the jam, not enough time to fix the mechanism. Mickey was going to die in this turret. He'd survived the fighters, survived the flak, survived everything the Luftwaffe could throw at them, and now he was going to drown trapped in a ball of plexiglass and steel. "There has to be a way," Walsh said. "We're not losing Mickey. We're not." Chen's voice came over the intercom, the bombardier thinking out loud. "The turret's held by 4 bolts, right? If we could remove those bolts, the whole turret would fall free when we ditch. Mickey could swim out." "The bolts are on the outside of the fuselage," Novak said. "We'd need someone to go outside at altitude." "That's suicide." "More suicide than ditching with the turret attached?" Chen shot back. Silence on the intercom. Everyone knew what Chen was suggesting. Someone would have to climb out onto the bomber's belly at 15,000 feet in sub-zero temperatures, with the wind screaming past at 200 miles per hour, and somehow remove 4 massive bolts using hand tools. It was insane. It was impossible. "I'll do it," Rodriguez said. His voice was weak, barely audible. "I'm already pretty much dead anyway. Might as well make it count." "Negative," Holbrook said firmly. "Rodriguez, you can barely move. We need another option." "There isn't one," Rodriguez said. "You know it. I know it. Mickey knows it. Somebody's got to go outside, and I'm the only one. Who doesn't have a job to do anymore. My turret's destroyed. I'm just dead weight now. Tom, don't, Mickey said. Don't do this. Already decided, Mickey. You saved us. You killed those fighters. You're the reason any of us are still breathing. I'm not letting you drown. Rodriguez disconnected from the oxygen system and grabbed a walk-around bottle, a portable oxygen cylinder that would last maybe 10 minutes at altitude. He found tools in the engineer's kit, a wrench, a hammer. Primitive tools for an impossible job. Novak helped him into a parachute, though both men knew it was futile. If Rodriguez fell from the aircraft, he'd be unconscious from hypoxia in seconds. Tom, Holbrook said, you don't have to do this. Yeah, Cap, I do. Rodriguez moved to the waist door, and Morrison helped him open it. The wind roared in, a screaming demon of freezing air that sucked the heat from the aircraft instantly. The door opening was maybe 3 feet wide. Rodriguez would have to climb out, work his way along the fuselage to the ball turret, and somehow hold on while removing 4 massive bolts, all while the bomber was descending, with 2 dying engines, at night, with wounds that were slowly killing him. He stepped into the wind and disappeared. Inside the ball turret, Mickey felt more than heard the impacts above him. Rodriguez was on the fuselage, crawling across the aluminum skin, using the rivets as handholds. The wind wanted to tear him away, wanted to throw him into the night like a leaf in a hurricane. But Rodriguez held on. The first bolt came free with agonizing slowness. Mickey could hear the wrench working above him, metal on metal. Then the second bolt. Rodriguez was moving on pure will now, beyond pain, beyond fear. The cold was shutting down his body, the wounds were bleeding freely, but his hands kept working. The third bolt. Number 4's going. Novak called. She's seizing. Feather it. Holbrook ordered. The last engine died. Devil's Chariot became a glider, a 40-ton aircraft with no power, dropping toward the English Channel at an increasing rate. 7,000 feet. 6,000. The water was rushing up to meet them. Rodriguez's hands found the 4th bolt. His fingers were numb, couldn't feel the wrench anymore. He worked by touch and memory, turning the bolt, feeling it loosen. Almost there. Almost. His foot slipped. He felt himself sliding backward, the wind grabbing him. His hand shot out, caught a handhold, held on with the last of his strength. The wrench fell away, tumbling into the darkness below. The wrench, Rodriguez's voice was barely a whisper over the intercom. I dropped the wrench. Tom, get back inside, Holbrook ordered. That's enough. We tried. 1 more bolt, Rodriguez said. Just 1 more. He pulled the hammer from his belt. With his last reserves of strength, he positioned the hammer against the bolt and hit it. Once. Twice. The bolt was damaged, partly stripped from his earlier efforts. On the 3rd hit, it sheared off completely. The ball turret dropped free. Mickey felt himself falling, still enclosed in the plexiglass sphere, tumbling through the darkness. For a moment, he was in free fall, the turret spinning around him. Then it hit something, the bomber's tail wheel, maybe, and the impact shattered the plexiglass. Suddenly, Mickey was falling free, no longer enclosed, the wind tearing at him. His hands found the ripcord. Pulled. The parachute deployed with a crack, the harness jerking hard against his body. He was floating now, suspended in the darkness, the wounded bomber above him descending toward the water. He saw Rodriguez still on the fuselage, trying to crawl back to the waist door. Saw the bomber hit the water, the impact throwing spray 100 feet into the air. Saw the aircraft begin to sink immediately, the open bomb bay flooding instantly, dragging the nose down. He saw figures scrambling from the wreckage, Morrison, carrying Kowalski. Chen, pulling himself through the navigator's hatch. Walsh, swimming away from the sinking bomber. Manning, helping Novak into a life raft. and Holbrook, still in the cockpit, making sure everyone else got out first. Rodriguez wasn't moving. He was still on the fuselage as the water rose over him. Mickey watched helplessly from above, descending slowly on his parachute, as the bomber sank. The last thing visible was the tail section, the number 427, painted on the vertical stabilizer, catching the moonlight for one final moment before the channel swallowed it whole. Mickey hit the water hard. The cold was a physical shock, driving the air from his lungs. His parachute was pulling him down, tangling around him. He fought with the harness, got it free, kicked toward the surface. He came up gasping, the life vest inflating automatically, and he searched the darkness for survivors. "Here." Morrison's voice. "Life raft. Swim toward my voice." Mickey swam. His limbs were already going numb, the channel's February waters killing with cold efficiency. But he swam. He reached the raft, and hands pulled him in. Morrison. Chen. Walsh. Novak. Manning. Kowalski, unconscious but alive. They searched the water for hours, calling names into the darkness. But Rodriguez never answered. Neither did Holbrook or Patterson. The captain had gone down with his aircraft, the radio operator had died in the initial attack, and Tom Rodriguez had given his life to save a ball turret gunner he'd only known for 6 months. The sun rose over the English Channel to find 6 men in a life raft, drifting slowly toward the English coast. An RAF rescue launch found them 2 hours later, hauled them aboard, wrapped them in blankets, and asked what happened. Mickey tried to explain. Tried to find words for the night fighters and the impossible shots and the gunner who'd climbed outside a dying bomber to save him. But the words wouldn't come. All he could say was, "Tom Rodriguez saved my life. He saved all our lives." Epilogue. Staff Sergeant Mickey O'Brien completed 35 missions before the war ended. He never flew as a ball turret gunner again. After that night, he transferred to waist guns. He said he couldn't go back in that turret, couldn't be enclosed like that, knowing what it cost Rodriguez to get him out. Tech Sergeant Tom Rodriguez was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on February 20, 1944. The citation reads in part, "With complete disregard for his own life and grievous wounds, he exposed himself to extreme danger and hostile fire to save the life of a fellow airman. His selfless courage exemplifies the highest traditions of military service." Captain James Holbrook's body was recovered from the channel 3 days after the ditching. He was found still strapped into the pilot's seat, a section of the cockpit that had broken free from the main wreckage. The after-action report concluded that he'd stayed at the controls until the last possible second, making sure the ditching was as controlled as possible, sacrificing his own chance to escape to give his crew those precious extra seconds.